Next story that we have to talk about is Pale Kings and Princes. This is the story that we get when Helen Blackthorne comes to the academy.
She goes and she kind of bashes the Fae.
He treated her really badly.
Yeah.
As soon as she came in, the teacher was like, tell them your name. And she's like, Helen Blackthorne. And they're like, no, tell her like who you really are. Tell them all who you really are.
Go and they're like, oh my gosh, like you're a Fae, you can't be trusted. And it's just like discrimination.
I'm pretty sure Julie walked out of the room.
Yeah, she did.
Because her parents were killed by
her
Fae.
parents were turned in the Dark War. Because it turns out the whole thing was the Fae went with Sebastian. And so now
that's why we have the cold peace. Really messed up how they treat her. And that bothers Simon. Like, Simon gets really offended about that. Because Simon was a downworlder. So he doesn't like the way that downworlders are being treated.
And she's half. It's not like... And she was raised a Shadowhunter.
Yeah.
It's just so cruel just because of her blood. I loved how Simon goes there and he starts to talk to her and he's like, I know that we don't really know each other very well or anything, but you know, I don't believe in how they're treating you. They give her like her own place and they tell her she can't leave. And it's just really bad.
She tells the story of her father, Andrew, and her uncle, Arthur, when they were with
the mother for 7 years.
They were with her for 7 years, and her father was like the Nerissa's plaything, and Arthur was driven to like insanity.
You find out at the end that that's not what happened at all. Like, they actually did fall in love, and that she made him think that because it was what would make him feel like at peace with the whole situation in the first place.
Yeah.
It's a really complicated history that they had. The highlight of this story for me was the scene with the weapons date with Izzy. And they've been having like these terrible dates where Simon gives her a handshake at the end of the night. It's just been awful.
Take dating advice from Jace.
They go to on a weapons date, like kind of like how Clace went on that weapons date. Simon is like, I don't really like weapons. Like,
and Isabel's like, can you just at least try? Like, you're not even trying right now. And he's like, okay, like yeah, I'll try. Like, we'll keep like going on our date.
Storms out of the weapons store. Last time I ever take dating advice from Jace, and Simon's like, you let Jace plan our date?
Yeah, he's like, that's the problem then.
And then the next story, Bitter Song. That was a story with Simon getting taken by the Fae, because it turns out that him and George and Julie and John and Marisol, they've all been going on these missions. And I love the dynamic between John and Marisol at this point. Like, they're kind of like bantering, and she's kind of like telling about all these mundane things. She's like, let me explain to you all about video games. And he's like, please don't. Like, they're so cute.
They end up having a run-in with the Fae. And
the Wild Hunt.
With the Wild Hunt. They end up running in with them, and Simon ends up taken, and he sees Mark Blackthorne. Yeah, and it's really sad. That moment was really sad because he's really lost his mind, and he says to him, he's like, when are the Shadowhunters coming? Are they coming to rescue me? And Simon's just like, I'm sorry, like, they had a vote and they're not coming. And it's really sad because he just keeps saying over and over the names of his siblings so he doesn't forget them. That was just so heartbreaking, that moment. That was really sad.
Because Helen was going to get married, and I loved before he leaves eventually, because he helps Simon figure out a way out. He's like, oh, you know, give him some water and he'll get out. And Simon's like, I'm not taking a drink from a Fae. Like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not that stupid.
And in there is the cave. So him and Izzy escape.
And then they go back in there and have like a role play thing again, where she's like, I've missed you, Lord Montgomery. And she locks themselves in there, and Izzy's like, I can't believe I am like so invested in a boy that this happens. This never happened to me before.
I got like taken.
This has never happened to me before. And then Simon's like, do you have the key? And she's like, yeah, I have the key, but that's beside the point. And they eventually got out, and then they go to the wedding. We see all the Blackthorne children, and Julian, it has this weight on his shoulder, and Simon sees it. He's like this 14-year-old kid, and he has to take care of all of these siblings.
And Simon ends up telling Helen, you know, Mark, you know, says hello. He sends his love, and like that was so really sad because
it's so tragic.
It's really sad.
The next story is the fiery trial. Okay, this was the Parabatai ceremony, and we see Jem in this, by the way. We see Jem and Magnus, they go, and Katarina's there too, and Clary's there. Simon walks in, and he's like, what's going on? And they nonchalantly give them water from Lake Lynn, which gives you hallucinations.
Yes, and then they end up having to like find each other like in the lake. That was scary. Like, you have no idea what's going on when you're reading. You don't know that that's what they did until the end.
Okay, but Jace was in like a love boat with Simon.
It's this acid trip that's going on. That was funny. And
he's like, where Clary goes, I go.
And then eventually you realize that it was like a test and stuff to see, obviously, if they could be Parabatai.
Yeah, he's like, you have to remember when we met.
Yeah, that was like a big thing. You have to remember where we met when we met. And then he ends up remembering. What did he remember? What was the point?
He remembered the whole thing of Java Jones, how he was trying to tell Clary that he liked her, and Clary ran out because Jace was there.
Which was very important because when they're watching the Parabatai ceremony with Emma and Julian, they realize like, these two should not be Parabatai because they love each other.
The whole time. Somebody stop
You knew it was gonna happen though.
Don't let this happen. It was so interesting seeing that ceremony because we haven't ever seen it before.
I love that they were there for them though. Like that Simon and Clary were there to watch that.
Jem talking. Like,
oh, I know.
He was like talking about the Parabatai.
Will. Oh, no. Next story we have to talk about is Born to Endless Night. Guys, if you read this, how did you survive? I don't think we were gonna survive. Malik adopting child.
So Simon goes out of the institute and they see like this baby has been neglected and just dropped
left there. This blue baby, a warlock baby.
George is like, why is the baby blue?
George is like, save it. And they're like, it's not choking, George. It's just a warlock. Simon, logically, is like, I can go get Magnus. He'll know what to do.
Him and Alec, they take this baby and
it's really Alec that turns into like dad mode and just like takes this child and is like, I will be its father. And
oh my god, scene of them at the crib when Magnus is just like staring at the baby and Alec is like, you know, I do want this, I do want this too, I don't feel trapped, I don't feel any of that. And oh my god, and how he was like, we have to, like, I thought we'd eventually have a family when we get married, and Magnus is like, that's never gonna happen.
When he's like, I don't want to be married to you unless we're wearing gold.
That line.
So it's like they're going to get married, but not until things change and they could do it the right way. I love how they have that child, and they named him Mag.
There was that scene when Magnus is like, I need to just go take a walk and like think about all
Magnus
this.
was having a breakdown because Magnus he's never had to deal with this. Like, Magnus has dealt with a lot of things in his long life, but he's never had a family like that. Like, Magnus has never settled down. Like, he's been around families, he's been around, you know, Tfsa and Will and all these different people, but he's never had a family.
Said the only child that he ever saw grow up was Clary.
But what really got me was the scene when Magnus says to the child, he's just like, we'll take care of him. Like, one day,
my god,
one day it might be just me and you, but it's like, because you know, obviously, like, 100 years, it's just gonna be Magnus and the baby. And like,
that was
like, Magnus will always have that child.
I love how he comes into he goes back up to their suite because, you know, at the academy, Magnus is like, if I have to teach there for a little while, I'm staying in the best suite ever. And he goes there and he gets all the food from like Whole Foods and he's like, yeah, Alec isn't gonna like that I did that, but I'll pay for it later.
Pay for later, it's alright.
Back into the suite. And all of the Lightwoods and Clary are there. Jace is on the floor. Izzy's like on a stool.
Yeah, Jace is like baby-proofing the place. Alec's parents were very involved with the baby because that really shows their development and that they're actually trying and that they're supporting them like that.
Especially with Robert.
Yeah.
And then, oh my god, how'd you like when Robert like said to Magnus, he goes to Magnus, he's like, so like, you made this baby with like, on purpose, right?
Yeah,
with like your magic.
He's like, you did that. I could see it.
Alec has blue eyes. The baby's blue. Your magic thing is blue. And
Maggie's just like,
do you know how babies get
like,
from?
That was one of my favorite lines.
I love the scene with Alec and Simon. How, like, Simon is like, you know, Jace has told me, like, you know, there's, like, this big secret. Like, why don't you like me? I loved when they actually talked that. He's like, what did you do? You saved Magnus's life when I couldn't. Like, all I've ever wanted to do was save people. And you went and you did it. And he didn't know how to be around that.
And he's like, I don't like talking about my feelings.
he's like, I have to wait at least like another year to have to talk about this again. Scene with Magnus and Simon. He was like, where did you get your name from? And he's like, the Magnus effect. And he like throws the coin.
It was like, my name's Magnus Bane. Thought you would remember that, Smedley. He like said something like that.
Oh my god,
really
I loved it. It was Harry's like, I can't believe that Magnus and Alec are parents. Like, can you imagine? James is like, I can imagine. I need a Clay's baby in the future, please.
Larry's just like, yeah, imagine in 10 years.
Yeah.
It was such a great story.
I love that story so
It
much.
was so beautiful. Like, thank you for that. The last story, Angels Twice Ascending. We finally got Simon becoming a Shadowhunter, like, for real. He ascended and George did not.
Oh, to put it lightly.
I'm sorry.
It's too soon. I just read that last night.
As soon as he started screaming, it was like,
like
like
there
he's
it is.
not gonna make it.
There it is.
And I mean, there was little hints though, how he was like, oh, this is like the last mouse, like, should we have a funeral for it? And like, it was like, oh, the last this, the last that. Like,
I'm
nostalgic.
so upset about that. I love George.
He
was so funny. He made me laugh so much. And
I'm still so upset about it.
Like, why'd you make me love him and then kill him? Looted the drink and everybody laughed while he was dying. I loved how at the end it was like all of them in that group. Like, it was Simon and George and John and Marisol and Julie, like, they had like their own group by the end of the story, like throughout the whole development as they were separated, and then they eventually come together, and it's like, it's all because of Simon. It's just so beautiful and so touching the way that whole story ended up coming together, and it really brought all of the stories full circle. I loved the scene with him and his mom.
That was
when he
so
talks to his mom, and the mom
sad.
is like, I feel like I betrayed you in some way. How weird is that? And if I ever did, like, I'm so sorry. And oh god,
he ends up not saying goodbye to his mom and his sister because
oh my god,
in the back of his head he's just like, this isn't goodbye. Like, I'm not like gonna put up with that. Like I don't care. I feel like the law is hard, but like I don't really care.
He's walking around, and then Izzy comes, and then we have the Izzy sex scene.
Finally, get a little bit more detail.
And then in the others, I know, I wanted more detail.
Got like nothing.
I wanted the Sizzy smut.
They basically implied it.
Simon's like, have we ever done this before? And Izzy's like, I would be mad at you if you forgot, but I'm not mad at you because we didn't do it yet. Like, you would remember, you would never forget that.
That was funny.
He's like, I love you. And she's like, you don't have to tell me this. He's like, I'm not telling you this now because, like, I want you to know that even without my memory, I love you. And that line was so beautiful. And she's like, I know. And he's like, is that a Star Wars reference?
That's so Sizzy though right there. We finally got, did we see them becoming Pyramidine? No.
No, and then the way that they did it was at the very end, it, like, flashed forward, kind of. It had Simon was kind of talking a little bit about his life as a Shadowhunter and how him and Jace would kind of spar, and Jace was like, I'm still superior, even though, like, you have angel blood now and you're a Shadowhunter, I'm still better than you. Yeah, and he was talking about how he would help the Malik baby. He would go and babysit Max for them, and he just kind of. And then you see the two of them, and he said that him and Clyde were days away from their parabatai ceremony. Like, they were planning for it, like, they're getting ready for it and everything. We got that scene of them at the London Institute, and he's, like, in the middle, and he's holding hands with Izzy and Clary, and looking at the George plaque. And how messed up is that of the Clave that they would not put him in the city of Bones?
Clave are terrible people.
But like, come on, he risked his whole life for that.
They don't care.
It's so terrible.
We did see George as a ghost.
That scene killed me. When you see him, he's like smiling at him, and then he goes, I'm gonna take the name Lovelace.
But now it's Simon Lovelace. Like, I started crying in the last story when he got his memories back, and he's flashing through his whole life with Clary, and you see like him and Clary when they're little, and then you see him with Isabel and him with everybody, and that just really, like, that broke me when, like, he was flashing back to everything.
I loved this book so much.
Please let us know your favorite stories.
What were your favorite parts?
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching
See you
and
next
crying
time.
with us.